And joining us today is Montana's sole congressman, Denny Rehberg. And let's get right to the questions.
Okay.
You have consistently opposed all of the moves in Congress to bail out various corporations, and I won't go through that full litany and that sort of thing. And this, in the face of a lot of experts who were saying that without those bailouts, that our credit markets were going to collapse, that we were going to have all kinds of collapse and possibly lead to not a recession, but a depression. But you stood fast on this. Why so?
There are many different ways to address a crisis. And you can throw money at a problem, or you can identify in a timely, in a transparent way the kind of program you want to implement. Let's use the most recent stimulus as an example. The proof is in the pudding. 12 cents out of every dollar is going to something that's stimulative. The other 88 cents went to additional appropriations. Social programs that may have merit on their surface, but you have a regular process for that. President Obama had an opportunity to take two different avenues. The one avenue is to address the crisis, strictly address the crisis, and that's economic stimulus, or use the crisis to expand government. And he took the second avenue with the acclamation of the House and Senate in the United States Congress. Now, we, on the other hand, had an alternative, and our alternative was to truly get money in the hands of people that are going to stimulate the economy. We have the second highest tax rate in the world, Japan being number one, and I don't need to explain what's happened with Japan's economy. If we were to lower the 35% tax rate to 25%, that would affect 27 million small businesses nationwide. If we were to cut the tax rate on individual tax filers from 15% to 10% and 10% to 5%, that would affect 550,000 tax filers in Montana alone. Now, we only have 960,000 people, and a lot of those are kids. So if you were to affect 550,000 tax filers, you would impact and in fact shock the economy through consumer confidence and actually truly getting the money in the hands of people where it's going to make a difference. So I'm all for the infrastructure construction that was done in the bill, but the other 88 cents was towards areas that had absolutely nothing to do with stimulating the economy. And what that's going to do is going to slow down the resolution of this problem. And unfortunately now, the money's gone.
Now, I had an economist on here that agrees with part of what you said and doesn't agree with another part. He says that yes, tax cuts, which is one of the things that you're proposing right here, in fact, get money into the hands of consumers faster. Question is, will the consumer spend that money, is one of the questions he raised. The other point is, he says that in the long haul, the best stimulus is increased spending, and he didn't seem to narrow it down. Do you think that there might not be an argument there for jacking up the economy, putting more money flowing through it to get consumers to spend more?
Well, I'd love to have a debate with him, because I guess I would have to ask him a further question. Did he mean government spending or spending on the part of the economy and those taxpayers? Because ultimately the decision was made that government creates jobs and government is the solution, and government is not. Now, government can be used as a partner, a silent or a minority partner, but it is not the economic engine that drives this country. Small business is. So if you truly want to stimulate the economy, you get money in the hands of the people that are actually doing the hiring or having to lay people off or making a determination they're going to increase their salaries or not be able to. You put money in the hands of consumers and you put money in the hands of small business. Now, ultimately, people do fear what's going to go on. There's this huge unknown out there. And most of the unknown is how much more can the government continue to spend to try and buy our way through this economic crisis. And we honestly believe, as an alternative, the way you turn it around, and we have history on our side. Look at 1963 and JFK. Look at 1981 and Ronald Reagan. Look at 2001, and if you think of what George Bush came through with both September 11th and Katrina, which is the largest natural disaster in the history of our country, we came through those two crises, and by lowering tax rates on all individuals and trying to stimulate the economy, we were able to come through those with growth. And so you don't do it by going back to a system that can be proven to have failed in the past by believing that government is the solution.
We're going to pause right there, Representative Rehberg, and we're going to return in just a moment, but we're going to turn first to the, we're going to bring back in a reporter panel, and After the break, we'll have more questions for Congressman Rehberg.
Continues.
And joining us now is our reporter panel. Joining us from the Great Falls Tribune is John Adams, who's a reporter over there and has been a guest before on our show as a reporter and is a veteran of both national and state politics. And Lisa Wolf, anchor reporter for Beartooth NBC, who's an avid follower of state and national government and politics. Welcome to both of you for this show. And Lisa, let's start the questioning with you this time.
Okay, Representative Rehberg, you believe tax cuts encourage Americans to invest and take risk. Do you think that argument still holds weight given there is so much uncertainty with Wall Street and so much uncertainty with this economy right now? Is that still the best way to get people to invest and stimulate our economy?
I do, and the way you could prove that is look throughout history. You know, the legislature's going on right now. Go back to 1989. I carried the legislation in the House of Representatives to lower the personal property tax from 13%, that's on business equipment, to 10%. Since that time, it's been incrementally reduced down to 3% with a discussion of eliminating it entirely. One of the things that people say is, well, look at all the money you'll be losing. No, if you lower the tax burden on a small business, it in fact stimulates the economy, and ours was out of whack with states around us, and as we lowered those tax rates, we saw more revenue coming in personal property tax because there was more business activity that occurred. And so as a small businessman myself, I can tell you there are certain things that work against you in running a small business. One is regulation and then the other is taxation. And if you don't have the ability to pass it along, then it just becomes a burden, it's a cost. And it helps you make the decision as to whether you can hire somebody else or increase the salaries or invest in that equipment. And so the proof is in the history of tax relief. Taxes are a disincentive to expand and grow and do business. And so if you can lessen the government's chunk that they're taking out of your pocket, you can in fact stimulate the economy.
Let's hear from John Adams at this point.
Thanks, Don. Congressman Rehberg, we talked a lot already this morning about government spending and the fact that our economy is in trouble right now.
Yes.
Given that, can we continue to spend, or do you support President Barack Obama's plan to send additional troops, sharply increase our military presence in Afghanistan? And can we afford that right now? And can we continue to afford these foreign wars with our economy in the shape that it's in? Well,
the answer is, can we afford not to? I mean, what is the point? When you have a $4 trillion budget, then what you start doing, and it's the appropriations process, you set priorities. And if you look at the American Constitution, what is really the function of the federal government? To do things that the individual states could not or won't because they can't. Defense is one of those. So if there's anything that's more important than any other issue that the federal government spends their money on, we better be paying attention to the security aspect of what's going on within our nation and around the world. And that's why we spend a lot of time and money and effort on Homeland Security, and that's why we spend a lot of time and effort, and why it's our largest expenditure is within the Department of Defense. And then within that, we set the priorities on the appropriations process, both in the House and the Senate, and ultimately on to the President. And so my answer back would be, there's a lot of things that we ought to be looking at cutting various budgets before we start cutting our federal defense dollars. Now, I happen to be one of those Republicans that sometimes gets in trouble with my own conference. But I say, you know, because the Republicans have a tendency, and Democrats sometimes agree as well, is we need to balance the budget, but boy, you know, Homeland Security and defense are off the table. Well, I'm sorry, but that's where you get the $500 toilet seats or the $100 hammers when you're not paying attention. Don't think that defense contractors can't pad their budgets too. And if you're always saying we're going to balance the budget, we're going to have a tight pencil, we're going to have the green eye shade, we're going to go over these budgets, but oh, by the way, defense and Homeland Security are off the table, I disagree. I think that everybody's budget ought to be on the chopping block, that we ought to fine tune and weed out all the waste, the fraud, the abuse that we possibly can. So I'm not saying that defense is tight, lean, and mean, and perfect. I'm suggesting we ought to go in and spend just as much time on that, but at the same time we have to set priorities, and Afghanistan is one of those priorities.
So you agree with the president that we ought to increase troop presence there?
I do.
Okay.
All right, we're going to take a break again, and after that break, we'll be back with more questions for Congressman Rehberg.
The Dunwell Report returns after this.